Today we're going to be talking about changes in demand and changes in supply, and we're going to be going a little bit deeper than the intro lectures that really just talked about the difference between quantity demand and what the curve looked like and why. So there are 8 determinants of demand, and it is very helpful to have a good command of what they are as we work through the course, because they keep coming back again and again. The first determinant is simply the number of consumers. So again, if you're thinking about this is something other than price that changes demand. And so the number of consumers is a logical place to start. So take, for example, a Motel 6 in Madras, Oregon. On a typical night, a room might go for $49.95. But in 2017, there was a very famous full solar eclipse that happened to go right across the middle of Oregon and right across the middle of Madras. So because of that event, there are going to be a lot more customers in Madras during the late part of the summer, and they're going to be able to sell their rooms for, let's say, for example, $73.99. They're going to be able to do this because the number of consumers in the town who are looking for motel rooms is higher. The next determinant is income, and there are actually 2 subsets of income. There's income for normal goods and income for inferior goods. So let's start with the definition. A normal good is one where, as people's incomes go up, the demand for the normal good increases, and as people's income goes down, demand for the normal good decreases. So I would say that 95% of all goods are normal goods. So you could think about a new car, clothes, shoes, a nice place to go out to dinner. All of these things you would consume more of if your income went up, and you would probably consume less of them if your income went down. The definition of an inferior good is that as people's income goes up, demand for these goods, these inferior goods, decreases, and as people's income goes down, demand for these inferior goods increases. So you could think of some examples in your head, I'm sure. Maybe fast food. As people's incomes goes up, they start eating better quality food, healthier food. You could also think about a place like a used car lot. If people's income are going down, they're probably going to be buying more used cars than new cars. So here's some other examples. Obviously, generic foods are going to be inferior goods, and brand name foods are going to be normal goods. Take, for example, a used furniture store or a new furniture store. One's going to be a normal good and one's going to be an inferior good. You've got a shady motel on the left that seems to rent the rooms by the hour, and then you've got the Bellagio in Las Vegas on the right. Obviously, one is an inferior good and one is a normal good. Swap meets, flea markets are going to be inferior goods in addition to used car lots, like we talked about. The next determinant of demand, something that shifts demand other than price, are preferences. Sometimes we call them taste preferences. So for example, in the late 1970s, if you were going to watch a movie at home, your preference would be maybe a Betamax tape and a Beta unit. But over time, tastes and preferences changed, and the VHS became in fashion, and the demand for Beta was out and the demand for VHS was in. But over time that changed as well, and soon came the DVD. So demand increased for the DVD, decreased for the VHS, and you can hardly find any VHS anymore. Then came Blu-ray, and now streaming, and so you don't really even have very many DVD players around anymore because everybody is streaming their movies on the internet. The fifth determinant is the price of a related product. So again, notice that it's not saying the price of the product that you're looking at, it's the price of a related product, for example, a substitute. So let's take Coke and Pepsi. The demand curve for one good can be affected by the change in the price of another related good. So if the price of a substitute increases, the demand for the other will increase as well, and vice versa. So let's take the Coke and Pepsi example. If the price of Pepsi falls, we know that that does not affect the demand for Pepsi, it affects the quantity demand for Pepsi. So if the price of Pepsi falls, what will happen to the demand for Coke? Well, if you take it very simply and you say, oh, the price of Pepsi falls, so people are going to buy more Pepsi, then they're probably going to buy less Coke. So the demand for Coke will decrease. And vice versa. If the price of Pepsi increased, the demand for Coke would increase as well because people would begin shifting over. On a similar point, the price of related products for complements. Complements are goods that inherently go together. Take, for example, peanut butter and jelly. In America, they go together, and so they're going to be related when it comes to demand. We know the demand curve can be affected by the change in the price of another related good, and complements are two goods that are bought and used together. So if the price of one increases, the demand for the other will fall. So think about that peanut butter and jelly example. If the price of peanut butter increased by, say, 100%, it doubled in price, then people are going to buy less peanut butter, and they're probably going to buy less jelly to go with it, so the demand for jelly would fall, even though it was just the price of peanut butter that increased. So here's another example. If the price of skis falls, what's going to happen to the demand for ski boots? Skis and ski boots go together, and so they're complements. So if the price of skis falls, people are going to buy more skis, and they're going to need more ski boots to go with it, so the demand for ski boots will increase. The last two are all about expectations. This is expected future prices by consumers and expected future income by consumers. Expected future prices will affect demand in this way. Take, for example, if you expected the price of a new car to drop next week, what are you going to do at this moment in time? Well, you're probably going to put off that purchase so the demand for the car will decrease at this moment as you wait for that price to drop. Expected future income, if you're expecting a raise, then you are going to start to increase your spending now. So if you, and that's going to affect your demand for all goods. If you expect your income to decrease in the future, if you think you're going to be laid off or your family's going to be laid off in some way, then you're probably going to cut back your spending now. And so your demand for all goods might decrease. So those are the 8. It's good to write them down, and it's good to have them in your back pocket, probably memorized for the rest of the course. Now we are going to go to supply, and this is going to be much shorter than demand. Let's take, for example, the product of cereal. Here we have a supply curve for cereal, and this is what it looks like when supply increases. Notice that it is a shift to the right. You should always think about shifting supply and demand in terms of a shift to the right and a shift to the left. A shift to the left is a decrease, and a shift to the right is an increase. Prices didn't change, but there's more cereal produced. So let's take some examples as a way to articulate what causes changes in demand. So what if a drought destroys the corn and wheat crops? How will that affect cereal? Well, you know that most cereal is made from corn and wheat. So at all of those prices, there is going to be less quantity supplied because of the drought. and you should see a shift to the left of supply. Notice that if you weren't thinking about left and right, it would actually look like supply was slightly increasing just because of where the curve is placed. So again, I implore you to think about shifts in terms of left being a decrease and right being an increase. Prices didn't change, but there is less cereal produced. What if cereal companies find a quicker way to make cereal? Well, technology, productivity is going to increase the supply of cereal, as I'm sure you thought. And here are the 5 shifters of supply. Prices and availability of inputs, meaning in cereal, we're talking about the availability of corn and wheat. The number of sellers, so if all of a sudden new cereal companies are created or some go out of business, that's going to affect supply. Technology, obviously, is going to, if it's an improvement in technology, it's going to increase supply. If it's a step back in technology, you might see a decrease in supply. And then government action. Taxes decrease the supply of goods because the businesses are forced to pay the taxes and have less capital left over to build their products. And subsidies increase supply because it's the government supporting a business or a market. The last determinant of supply is expectations of future profit. If you think there's going to be more profit in the future, you are very likely to hold back your supply right at this moment and wait for those prices to increase. A good example of that might be the oil industry. If there's a conflict in the Middle East and the major oil companies think that the price of oil will increase due to that instability, they might hold back their supply right now and decrease supply to the market in waiting for those prices to increase.